Hey everyone, welcome to Reddit Readout. Today we are checking out People of Reddit. Story 1. Deflated tires to get back at bully. This is actually a few decades ago. I was bullied a lot by a kid, who would physically hit me. I would stay upset for a long time and really wanted to get back, but I was timid and short and weak. This kid had a bike, and began to sneakily deflate the tires whenever I could. He had no way of being completely sure it was me, though he definitely suspected me, because I was super careful. I'd do it at random times when no one was around. Of course, all he needed to do was inflate it again, but that was work. This wasn't the era of battery-operated inflators, we had hand or foot pumps. It gave me a lot of pleasure to see him grunting away to pump it back up with air, and getting late for school or play. Story 2. Invite two guys to the same dance. Have fun dancing by yourself. Alright, I'll try to keep this one short and sweet, but it was still a pretty fun time. A couple of weeks ago I went dancing at a place I had never been before. Unfortunately for me, almost everyone there had a partner. But I was able to find a very attractive girl to dance with. I'll call her Brittany for the sake of the story. Brittany was hot and knew how to dance incredibly well. Those were good things. Unfortunately for me, I got lulled right in and asked for her number, which I got. A week or two goes by and she texts me saying that she wants to go dancing again. That's great. I get to the dance and she says she's going to be late because she's getting food. It seems a little weird that she would delay showing up to the dance with someone she invited in order to eat first, but hey, maybe she was so busy she didn't have time to grab anything. So I walk in and sit down in the corner waiting for her to arrive. Similarly to the last time I attended, pretty much everyone has a partner, so there's only me and one other guy there who are waiting for someone to show up. He comes and sits down by me and we get to chatting. I'll call him Matt. We're small talking a bit and it turns out we both are named Matt. We've both been going dancing for a similar amount of time, and we were both there waiting for a girl. A moment of realization dawns on me. I just ask, Brittany. He nods his head yes and smiles at me. He was actually a super cool guy, so we chatted for a bit. I was going to get up and leave, but then he suggested something even better, waiting until she got there and then both leaving together. So we waited for her to show up, then left as she was setting some of her things down. I gave other Matt a good handshake before we parted ways. It still feels kind of sucky, but at least we both got to leave on our own terms instead of both getting played by the same woman. Story 3. The 15 items or less lane. I'll admit that I count people's items when we're in this lane, but I never say anything if they're over, just mentally judge them. Yesterday I hopped in the 15 items or less lane with exactly 15 items. After I put the last item on, the lady behind me tapped me on the shoulder and loudly said, "Sir, you have more than 15 items, you're going to have to use the other lane." I proceeded to pick up and count every single one of my items to her. I held up the last one, a watermelon, and said 15 just as loudly as she had called me out. She got really quiet, really quick. I then grabbed a pack of gum and threw it on the conveyor belt. Story 4. Cut me off or be a douche, pay the price. A friend of mine growing up, this is his story, was a super practical. He was an electrician by trade, an apprentice when this story happened, but he could fix, build, create anything, and he was a devious practical joker. One time he rewired my car so the wipers came on when I used my indicators. He would often lament the shitty behavior of many drivers in our town. I have lived in 4 cities in my life, and without doubt our hometown did have the worst drivers. Selfish, rude, and aggressive. So my friend decided to do something to make these drivers pay. He relocated wiper washer outlet to the front grille of his car and filled the reservoir with, amongst other things, including his piss, flavored milk, you name it, Thai fish sauce. Thai fish sauce was the piece de resistance. That stuff really reeks. So when anyone cut him off in traffic, he would spray the backs of their cars with Thai fish sauce from washer reservoir. This was in the day when aircon in cars was not so common, so the smell is hitting those drivers and their passengers hard, but by the time they'd worked out what had happened my friend was long gone. He said one time that the angle of his victim's vehicle was such that he was able to spray the tuff straight into the driver's side open window. All the victims were clueless as to where this was coming from, so it really was the perfect crime. Story 5. Tell me I'm not responsible. I think not. So, I had a pretty big family growing up. I'm the eldest of 4 siblings, the youngest one is like 15 years younger than me. Our dad was the stereotypical Ron Swanson type figure who started from nothing and ended up to be a big manager for an oil firm. He'd pretty much take care of everything. Taxes, utility bills, chores, you name it. My dad would always hate on me for being too soft or not having what it takes to survive in this world. IBTW, followed his footsteps into the oil industry and became a petroleum engineer, absolutely hated being on the rigs but just kept going for the sweet dough. Everything was fine till things became serious with my girlfriend. Eventually I proposed and we were engaged. For some weird reason, my dad did not approve of my relationship, telling me to save up for and actually buy a house before getting married, which frankly was a bit unreasonable. As the wedding draws near, my dad completely disowns me. Accuses me of being selfish and just decides not to attend the wedding. I do eventually convince him to attend, didn't want this to be a thing, and he does reluctantly. He would always call me irresponsible and lazy after that. A common thing he would always taunt me with would be once we're gone, no one's going to take care of the little one, referring to my youngest sibling. Well, time goes by, eventually COVID hits and my parents don't make it. I get pretty beat up, I was the one taking care of them during their sickness. Since my dad would manage everything I was pretty clueless about managing the family finances etc. but eventually I do get on top of things. Fast forward a couple of years. I've been working non-stop to pay for the whole family. The youngest one has been going to uni and is acing it. I haven't let my siblings feel they're alone even for a day. I guess that's the sweetest revenge. Proving my dad wrong. Story 6. My homeless dad used me in his money scheme so I took it all. Okay, so the homeless guy is technically my dad. My dad was only in my life actively from ages 0 to 7 and in that time gave me a shit ton of trauma. He was a hardcore alcoholic manipulator and a lot of other things I can't say. My mom being the badass she is left him and for a short bit we did weekends at his place. It was a never-ending cycle of him drinking being a POS and then buying us over with animals and gifts. After getting several DUIs, unpaid child support and a few child endangerment cases he up and left to avoid going to jail. Like disappeared, left the animals locked in the house that he abandoned and shut off his phone. Every few months or so he would randomly show up at my school drunk and crying with gifts in hand or leave notes on our door. My school literally had to implement a safety plan because my mom was scared he would take me. That stopped and didn't hear from him for about 13 years. When I was 20 he messaged me on Facebook saying he would love to get to know me and asking if there's anything I need financially. My initial response, sick to my stomach and crying, quickly turned to anger. I was broke and really could use the money and I mean he owed me, right? I told him I would meet and needed money for rent. When I saw him my stomach turned. He looked like the crazy guy you see on the side of the road begging for money. He really didn't make much sense, just talked a lot of shit about my mom saying she was a liar and turned us against him and mumbling nonsense. Apparently his brother, my uncle that I have never had a relationship with, would no longer give him money but would wire transfer him money for me. He told his brother I needed 1,500 and told me he would take 500 and give me 1,000. His crappy burner phone ran out of minutes so one of the calls to his brother was made from my phone. Of course he didn't have an ID or anything so I would need to pick it up with him. When someone wires you money they get a code then give you the code and voila you get the money. My dad wouldn't give me the code until we were physically at the place to pick it up, which we planned to do the following morning. The next morning I decided to text my uncle since I now had his number and ask him directly for the code. I got the code, picked up the money and blocked my POS dad. He made sure to leave me some deranged voicemails about how big of a POS I am. He pretty much used me to get money from his brother. If he really wanted to be in my life he would have taken the proper steps to do so and change, but he never did. Not denying what I did wasn't shitty, but also fuck my dad. Edit. My uncle does well financially and obviously was fine with sending me money. Which at the time I definitely needed. I saw a few. Story 7. Petty revenge on Mill while moving. Sorry, long rant. Some short backstory. Mill is alcoholic, narcissistic, verbally and mentally abusive. I was not aware of the mental illness or the extent of her mental illness, until I was deep into my marriage. My Mill and her ex-husband bought this house that essentially was just for her. It didn't fit a family, the bedrooms were too small, it was 3 floors of a doll-like house that she insisted on having. Half of her clothes didn't even fit in her master bedroom, so the ex-husband and her clothes had to be stashed into my husband's room. But, Mill loved the house, and that was all that mattered. There have been numerous storms and hurricanes, which Mill has refused to evacuate from, because she told everyone she was going to die in that house. Narc abuse. Anyway, after coming to terms with her never leaving unless it's carrying out her cold dead body, she just ups and decides to sell the house. My husband and I are there on the last day, per her request for emotional support. So, we basically go there and end up supervising her weird behavior all day. This is where my petty revenge comes in. She followed the moving crew around, with food and sandwiches. They didn't want them, so instead she just cried about moving, and followed them around. Then she got mad at them for making a water ring on her kitchen table, which she wasn't taking with her, and not using a coaster. She asked us to help pack some leftover stuff, but we ended up not doing anything, because once we packed up things per her request it wasn't right, so we had to unpack it. We couldn't throw away or reorganize anything, in case the next owners wanted it, they didn't. We tried throwing away dead plants from the front yard, and we had to put them back. We later drove by and guess what? They were gone. Anything we had ever given her in terms of gifts, were in a big pile to be sold at an estate sale. I was really insulted, because she made such a big deal about getting the right gifts, or specifically the ones she wanted over the years. A couple of years ago her ex-Mill died, but before she died, she forced my husband to bring her to the ex-Mill, and then current Mill grilled this poor senile lady, on what she remembered about her. Talk about narcissism. Then, after she died, she raged about how she had nothing to remember the ex-Mill, and we had to give her something. So, we gave her a really nice dish set, which she displayed in a case. Mill moved, and threw the dish set she raged about, into this junk pile. I even refurbished her ex-Mill's original painting of flowers she loved, and that was just gone, disappeared. When I asked her about it, she played dumb. I spent a whole summer refurbishing this dumb picture for her. But also, in this pile that she kept showing us over and over, and like wagging it in front of us like it was a big deal, that she just knew she would be getting big bucks for, was a Monteverde pen, that she had gotten when she married the ex-husband. She kept trying to get us to take her items from a pile that was not being sold, and it was a bunch of junk. Then, she was insulted when we didn't want her junky crap. She was mad that we didn't want her brand new furniture that she had wasted money on and bought right before moving. She was mad that we didn't want her dishes. She was mad and drunk and angry the whole day, and nothing we did was good enough. We basically just sat back and watched her spin out. She gave me a pile of jewelry from another relative, that she didn't even like, took the good stuff and gave me the junk stuff. She spun herself so out of control that day she had no clue that I just took that damn Monteverde pen, until days later at the estate sale. I am not proud of myself for doing so, but, at the end of the day I had enough of the abuse and belittling. And so did my husband, we like ran out of there. And guess what? The pen, not worth anything. I ended up throwing it in the trash. Again, not my proudest moment, but I needed an angry release from the day. She has been a million times easier to deal with since moving. Thank you for reading. That's all for today. Please don't forget to like and subscribe.